I watched my own wife get handcuffed on our own property by cops who believed a complete stranger over the deed in our hands. There I stood, helpless as a newborn, watching Diana's hands get zip-tied behind her back while this woman, this absolute menace named Lorraine, filmed the whole thing with her phone like she was documenting some kind of victory. The metallic click of those handcuffs still haunts me. My wife's confused tears mixing with my own rage paralysis as neighbors peered from their porches like we were some kind of afternoon entertainment. Lorraine stood there with her triumphant smirk, waving around this official-looking HOA violation notice that turned out to be as fake as her authority. Our legal documents, the ones that proved we owned this land, scattered across our own driveway in the morning wind like confetti at the world's worst celebration. What would you do if someone convinced the police you were trespassing on your own land? Drop your craziest HOA horror story below and tell me where you're watching from, because this lake war is about to get wild. My name's Marcus, and at 52, I thought I'd finally earned some goddamn peace. Spent 30 years as an electrician, crawling through attics and fixing other people's disasters while my back screamed for mercy. My wife Diana, she's 48 and handles numbers like a chess master. We'd been saving every spare dollar for 15 years to buy our slice of paradise. Whispering Pines Lake sits 2 hours north of the city, where the air actually smells like pine instead of car exhaust and broken dreams. We found this perfect 1.2-acre lot with a vintage 1970s cabin that needed TLC but had solid bones. The kind of place where loons call across morning water instead of sirens shrieking through your nightmares. Our realtor sweet as pie mentioned that some neighbors are particular. Should have asked her to define particular, because apparently it means completely unhinged. Week 2 of ownership, I'm stacking firewood when this voice cuts through my peace like a chainsaw. "Excuse me, are you the new owners?" I turn around to find this woman clutching a clipboard like it's the Declaration of Independence. She's got a measuring tape draped around her neck like some kind of suburban Medal of Honor, and this smile that screams, "I'm about to ruin your day." I'm Lorraine Kessler, Community Standards Coordinator for the Whispering Pines Lake Homeowners Association. The smell of fresh sawdust hung thick in the morning air, mixing with the clean scent of lake water and something else, something sharp and chemical that made my nose twitch. Later, I'd recognize that as Lorraine's signature perfume. "Oh, to Crazy Lady." She launches into this laundry list like she's prosecuting a war criminal. Wrong gate color. Boat dock violates setback requirements. Firewood stacking disrupts visual harmony. And my personal favorite, our mailbox was guilty of aggressive nonconformance. That's $350 in immediate compliance fees plus 75 monthly dues. Diana appears on the porch, dish towel in hand, looking like she's trying to process what fresh hell has arrived at our door. "I'm sorry, but we didn't see any HOA mentioned in our closing documents." Lorraine's smile turns razor sharp. "Honey, there's a lot you city folks don't understand about maintaining proper community standards. We protect property values here." The way she spat "city folks" made my teeth grind. Diana grew up in a farming town with 800 people, hardly downtown Chicago. 2 days later, the witch returns with backup. Enter Tyler, her 30-something compliance officer who looks like he's never held a tool more complex than a smartphone, but sports an official-looking badge like he's FBI. Tyler photographs our property with the intensity of a crime scene investigator. Click, click, click. Every angle of our dock, our offensive gate, even the way we dared to park our truck on our own land. They slap this official-looking final notice under our windshield wiper. Professional letterhead, legal-sounding threats, demanding we repaint our gate by Friday or face escalating enforcement action. Here's the thing. I might just be an electrician, but 30 years of dealing with contractors taught me to smell bullshit from 3 counties away. That evening, I take a walk. 6 other properties have identical notices fluttering like white flags of surrender. Diana fires up her laptop that night, and when my wife gets that particular look in her eye, somebody's about to have a very bad day. "County records show no registered HOA," she announces, fingers flying across the keyboard. I call Betty, the previous owner. "Oh, sweetie," she sighs. "Lorraine's been terrorizing folks for 3 years. Most people just pay her protection money to make it stop." Diana's already 10 steps ahead, pulling up state business filings. Marcus, look at this. She filed LLC paperwork but never registered as a legitimate HOA. This woman's running a straight-up extortion racket. The metallic taste of our well water seemed sharper that night, but underneath it was something else entirely, the taste of a fight we were absolutely going to win. Diana's not the type to roll over and play dead. Next morning, she marches into town and returns with a military-grade electronic keypad lock for our gate, the kind banks use on their back doors. If this psycho wants to play games, Diana announces, drilling holes for security cameras, we're going to document every lunatic move she makes. She posts private property signs every 50 feet like she's marking territory, each one laminated and legally bulletproof. Then comes the evidence notebook, a spiral-bound testament to human stupidity that would make prosecutors weep with joy. The smell of fresh ink mixed with morning coffee as Diana documented everything with the precision of a forensic accountant, which, fun fact, is exactly what she used to be before switching to part-time bookkeeping. Lorraine had no idea she'd just picked a fight with someone who could trace a penny through a money laundering scheme. 3 days later, Lorraine shows up with actual bolt cutters. I'm inside replacing a busted light fixture when Diana's voice cuts through the morning air. Ma'am, step away from our property immediately or I'm calling the police. I peer out the window to witness Lorraine literally attempting to cut our new lock while Tyler films the whole thing like they're producing Criminal Activity for Dummies, the home video. This gate blocks emergency vehicle access, Lorraine declares to Diana's camera with the confidence of someone who's clearly lost touch with reality. The Homeowners Association maintains easement rights. Diana doesn't even blink. Show me the recorded easement document. Out comes Lorraine's briefcase of bullshit fake emergency access bylaws, fabricated community covenants, forged signatures on documents that looked official if you squinted and had recently suffered a head injury. This woman had invested more creativity in her fraud than most people put into their actual careers. But here's where Lorraine's amateur hour meets reality TV. 20 minutes later, a sheriff's patrol car rolls up our driveway. Deputy Craig emerges looking like he'd rather be wrestling alligators than dealing with neighborhood drama. Ma'am, he addresses Diana while Lorraine practically vibrates with anticipation. I have a report that you've illegally modified community property and are preventing lawful emergency access. The crunch of gravel under Deputy Craig's boots sounds like a funeral march as Diana calmly retrieves our deed, title insurance, property survey, and tax records from the truck. Meanwhile, Lorraine's frantically shuffling through her folder of fiction, producing what she calls the HOA Master Deed, a document that supposedly grants her association magical powers over everyone's property. Officer, this woman is clearly a squatter who's compromised community safety infrastructure, Lorraine announces with the righteous fury of someone who actually believes her own lies. That's when I nearly torpedo our entire case by marching toward Lorraine, ready to introduce her face to some harsh truths about reality. Diana's hand catches my arm with surprising strength. Marcus, document, don't react. Her voice stays steady, but I feel the tremor in her fingers. Smart woman saved us from a disaster. Deputy Craig examines both sets of documents with the enthusiasm of someone solving advanced calculus. Real estate law wasn't exactly day one at the police academy, but even he could spot the difference between legitimate county records and Lorraine's Microsoft Word masterpieces. Ma'am, he finally tells Lorraine, whose face has progressed through the entire visible spectrum of rage. These people have clear legal title. They can secure their property however they want. Lorraine's expression shifts to what I can only describe as nuclear meltdown meets wounded rhinoceros. This community has standards, she shrieks, gathering her fake documents like a magician whose trick just exploded. You people clearly don't understand what civilized living means. She storms off with Tyler shuffling behind her, but not before shooting us a look that promised this was just the opening act of a very ugly show. Here's Lorraine's first major tactical error. Diana had been recording everything on her phone, perfectly positioned to capture both Lorraine's attempted property destruction and Deputy Craig's confirmation of our ownership rights. After they leave, Diana files harassment complaints with the sheriff's department and discovers something delicious. Deputy Craig is Lorraine's nephew. Conflict of interest much? But the real bombshell comes that evening when Mrs. Kowalski shuffles over during our barbecue. She's 70-something with worried eyes and hands that shake when she talks. "You folks better watch yourselves," she whispers, constantly glancing back at her house. "Lorraine's run off 3 families already. The Hendersons paid her $2,000 just to stop the harassment." The taste of grilled burgers turned metallic in my mouth. We'd bought paradise and accidentally declared war on the neighborhood mafia boss. Lorraine's next move came straight from the psychopath's greatest hits collection. If you can't destroy someone directly, cut off their lifelines and watch them suffocate. Monday morning, our power dies. Not from a storm or equipment failure, a deliberate shutoff because some concerned citizen called the electric company claiming we had an unauthorized hookup, stealing juice from community lines. Tuesday brings the water district, armed with clipboards and suspicious frowns, investigating reports of illegal well usage that supposedly violated county groundwater regulations. Wednesday's special guest? The health department, complete with soil probes and attitudes, because apparently our septic system poses an imminent public health threat, requiring immediate inspection and potential condemnation. Each visit costs us time, money, and chunks of our sanity, while Lorraine sits on her deck across the lake, watching through binoculars like some demented birdwatcher cataloging her prey. Diana starts connecting dots with the methodical fury of someone who once caught a CEO embezzling pension funds through fake vendor invoices. She pulls county records going back 3 years and discovers Lorraine has been weaponizing bureaucracy like it's her personal army. The Hendersons endured 6 months of utility harassment before coughing up Lorraine's compliance fees just to make the nightmare stop. The elderly Petroskis had their power cut for 3 days during a 90-degree heat wave because Lorraine convinced the electric company their medical equipment was somehow overloading community circuits. Here's the part that made my blood boil. The Johnsons, a sweet retired couple who'd saved 40 years for their lake house, actually fled like war refugees. Sold their dream home at a $30,000 loss rather than fight Lorraine's reign of terror. The pattern was crystal clear. Systematic harassment designed to break people's spirits and empty their bank accounts. Thursday morning, I'm at Henderson's Hardware buying PVC fittings when Jim Lorraine's live-in boyfriend and apparent enforcer materializes beside me like a bad rash. "You know," Jim says, examining paint cans with the intensity of someone planning the Sistine Chapel, "your wife's making things real uncomfortable for everyone." The familiar smell of sawdust and WD-40 fills the air while other customers suddenly develop intense interest in nearby merchandise displays. Nothing like small-town drama to make shopping awkward. "Marcus, right? Look, nobody wants problems here. Lorraine's just maintaining community standards. You city folks roll up thinking you can ignore established protocols, but lake living has rules." I set down my pipe fittings and give Jim my full attention. He's about 50, soft around the middle, with hands that look like they've never touched anything rougher than a TV remote. "Community standards," I repeat slowly. "You mean like filing false utility complaints and terrorizing senior citizens?" Jim's smile turns predatory. "Sometimes protecting property values requires difficult conversations. Investments need safeguarding, you understand." Store owner Pete Martinez suddenly becomes fascinated by our exchange, drifting closer while pretending to organize his bolt display. Smart man, he's about to witness something important. "Here's what I understand," I announce, loud enough for Pete and half the store to hear. "Your girlfriend is running a protection racket, and I've got documentation proving every bit of it." Jim's mask slips completely. "Accidents happen around lakes, Marcus. Docks collapse without warning. Boats develop mysterious leaks. Septic systems back up into people's kitchens. Would hate to see you folks experience those kinds of mechanical failures." And there it was. Jim just made direct threats in front of witnesses. When Diana taught me about building legal cases during her forensic accounting days, she always said criminals eventually hang themselves if you give them enough rope. Jim had just braided his own noose. That evening, Diana transforms our kitchen table into mission control. Spreadsheets tracking every harassment incident, photographs of Lorraine's forged documents, and research into legitimate HOA formation requirements, because apparently my wife once helped prosecute a similar scam in her previous life. "Real HOAs have to jump through expensive legal hoops," Diana explains, pointing to her screen. "Articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State, recorded CC and Rs with the county, registered agent filings, none of which cost less than several $1,000s. Lorraine's too cheap and too lazy for legitimate paperwork." But Diana's nuclear discovery comes when she digs into Lorraine's own property records. Our self-appointed environmental enforcer has been living with a catastrophically failing septic system for 18 months, creating the exact contamination hazard she keeps accusing everyone else of causing. She's projecting every single violation onto her neighbors, Diana says, highlighting county citations on Lorraine's property. Classic criminal psychology: accuse others of your crimes before they can accuse you. The metallic taste of our well water suddenly makes perfect, disgusting sense. Lorraine's septic disaster is probably poisoning the groundwater we all share. Time for some community standards enforcement of our own, Diana announces, with a smile sharp enough to fillet fish. The evening loons sounded like war cries echoing across the water. Labor Day weekend, Diana and I decide it's time to build some alliances. We invite Mrs. Kowalski and the Hendersons over for a barbecue, nothing fancy, just burgers and the kind of conversation that happens when decent people finally stop being afraid. You know what the crazy part is? Henderson says, nursing his second beer while watching the sunset paint the lake gold. We've been paying Lorraine's fake dues for 2 years, $750 down the drain because we were too scared to fight back. Mrs. Kowalski nods, her weathered hands wrapped around a coffee mug despite the warm evening. She told me if I didn't pay, she'd report my late husband's workshop as a hazardous structure. I've been giving her $50 a month just to keep his memory safe. The smell of charcoal and searing meat mingles with something else, the sweet scent of solidarity finally taking root. We're building something here, something Lorraine can't fake or bully or threaten away. I'd pulled proper fire permits for our evening bonfire because, unlike some people, I actually follow real laws. The flames crackle and dance while we share war stories and plan our counterattack. Around 9 p.m., Lorraine materializes like a horror movie villain, flanked by Tyler and her sister Brenda, a woman who looks like she eats children for breakfast and uses their bones as toothpicks. This gathering violates community noise ordinances, Lorraine announces, brandishing yet another fake document, and that fire represents a clear and present danger to neighboring structures. Tyler starts photographing our perfectly legal bonfire while Brenda takes notes like she's documenting evidence for the Nuremberg trials. The whole performance would be comedy gold if it wasn't so pathologically obsessive. "Ma'am, we have proper permits," Diana says calmly, producing the county fire permit from her back pocket. "Would you like to examine them?" Lorraine's face cycles through several shades of frustrated purple before she retreats with her minions, muttering threats about escalated enforcement actions. That should have been the end of it. Should have been. 2 a.m., Diana shakes me awake. "Marcus, I smell smoke." I bolt upright, instantly alert the way you get when 30 years of electrical work has taught you that smoke means disaster. Through our bedroom window, orange flames dance about 30 yards from our dock, licking hungrily at the dried brush between our property and the lake. The acrid stench of burning vegetation mixed with something else, something chemical and wrong that made my throat close up. Gasoline. Someone had used gasoline to start this fire. Diana's already on the phone with 911 while I grab our garden hose and start soaking everything within reach. The flames are moving fast, too fast for a natural brush fire, reaching toward our dock like grasping fingers. Fire department arrives in 8 minutes. Small town response times are actually pretty impressive when your life isn't flashing before your eyes. Fire Marshal Rodriguez takes one look at the burn pattern and starts asking the kind of questions that make arsonists nervous. "Accelerant usage, definitely gasoline," he tells us while his team mops up the last hot spots. "See these poor patterns? Someone wanted this fire to spread fast and wide." Our security cameras captured a shadowy figure fleeing toward Lorraine's side of the lake around 1:47 a.m. The image quality isn't perfect, but the person's build and gait look suspiciously Tyler-shaped. More damning evidence comes from Pete Martinez at the hardware store, who remembers Tyler buying a 5-gallon gas can the previous afternoon. Said it was for his mother's generator, Pete tells the investigating detective. Seemed nervous, kept looking over his shoulder. But here's where Lorraine's master plan backfires spectacularly. The fire brings our neighbors together like nothing else could have. Mrs. Kowalski admits Lorraine threatened to burn down her shed if she didn't start paying double dues. The Hendersons reveal they've been extorted for nearly $3,000 total. 3 more families emerge from the shadows with their own horror stories. Most heartbreaking is elderly Mr. Petrov, who shows up at our door the next morning with medical bills documenting stress-induced cardiac episodes directly caused by Lorraine's harassment campaign. This sweet old man, a retired teacher who dedicated his life to helping kids, nearly died because some psychopath decided his mailbox was the wrong color. She told me the state would condemn my property if I didn't pay for structural compliance inspections, he says, hands shaking as he holds his hospital discharge papers. I gave her $400 I couldn't afford because I was terrified of losing my home. Diana creates a neighborhood WhatsApp group that night, 8 families, strong and growing. She researches criminal penalties for impersonating government authority, which apparently carries up to 5 years in prison when fraud is involved. More importantly, she discovers that organized schemes targeting multiple victims can trigger federal racketeering charges under the RICO Act, the same law they use to prosecute organized crime families. The taste of smoke lingered in our mouths for days, but underneath it was something sweeter. The taste of justice, finally within reach. Lorraine had pushed too far, burned too many bridges, and now her victims were becoming her prosecutors. Diana's forensic accounting instincts kicked into overdrive the morning after the fire. While I was dealing with insurance adjusters and fire damage estimates, she was hunting bigger game. Every legitimate HOA has to provide financial records to homeowners, Diana explained, settling into her laptop like a sniper taking position. It's actually required by law in most states. Let's see what Lorraine's books look like. She fired off a certified letter demanding complete financial statements, bank records, and audit reports for the Whispering Pines Lake Homeowners Association. The kind of request that makes honest organizations reach for their filing cabinets and criminal enterprises break into cold sweats. Lorraine's response came within 48 hours, a manila envelope stuffed with spreadsheets that looked professional enough to fool most people. Detailed income statements showing $32,000 in reserve funds, expense reports for community maintenance and professional services, even fake receipts for landscaping work that supposedly kept our neighborhood looking pristine. But Lorraine had made one crucial mistake. She'd tangled with someone who spent 15 years catching white-collar criminals by following their money trails. Look at these numbers, Diana said, highlighting discrepancies with the precision of a surgeon marking tumors. She claims $800 monthly income from dues, but only shows 6 families paying. The math doesn't work unless families are paying different amounts, which violates every HOA regulation ever written. Diana's real breakthrough came when she traced Lorraine's business banking records through public filings. The Whispering Pines HOA account contained exactly $847, not the $32,000 in reserves her fake statements claimed. Even better, the bank record showed a pattern of personal withdrawals, car payments, credit card bills, even grocery runs to Walmart. Classic embezzlement behavior that Diana had seen a dozen times during her corporate investigation days. She's been running a check-cashing scheme, Diana explained, spreading bank statements across our kitchen table like a poker player, revealing a winning hand. Collecting real money from scared neighbors, then spending it on personal expenses while creating fictional reserves to justify future shakedowns. But the nuclear revelation came when Diana contacted the State Consumer Protection Agency and ran Lorraine's name through their fraud database. Our community standards coordinator had a previous conviction for running an identical scam in Jefferson County back in 2018. Fake property management company, forged documents, vulnerable elderly victims. She's a repeat offender, Diana said, printing court records that read like a blueprint for Lorraine's current operation. Same fake authority complex, same targeting of retirees, same pattern of escalating harassment when people resist. My wife's insurance background kicked in next. She called our homeowners policy company and discovered we'd been paying inflated premiums based on Lorraine's false claims about HOA requirements and community risk factors. Our agent confirmed no legitimate HOA existed in our area, meaning we'd been overcharged by nearly $400 annually. This opens up a whole new legal avenue, Diana said, her voice carrying that particular tone she gets when she's about to ruin someone's entire existence. Insurance fraud carries federal penalties, mail fraud for using postal services to send fake notices. And if we can prove she's targeted people based on age or perceived financial status, we're looking at civil rights violations. The power dynamic had completely reversed. What started as us defending our property had evolved into building a criminal case against an organized fraud operation. That evening, Diana called an emergency meeting at our cabin. 10 families showed up, more than had ever gathered in one place since Lorraine began her reign of terror. The total damage became clear: over $15,000 in fake dues collected, thousands more in unnecessary expenses, and immeasurable psychological trauma inflicted on decent people who just wanted to enjoy their retirement. "We're not victims anymore," Diana announced to our living room full of neighbors who'd found their courage. "We're prosecutors building a case that's going to put this woman in prison where she belongs." Diana transformed our cabin basement into something that looked like a FBI task force headquarters. Charts covered the walls tracking every fraudulent transaction, harassment incident, and forged document. Red string connected photographs to witness statements like we were hunting a serial killer, which, emotionally speaking, wasn't far from the truth. "We need a real lawyer," Diana announced, pulling up the State Bar Association website. "Someone who understands both criminal fraud and civil RICO violations." Enter Sarah Chen, a real estate attorney with a side passion for taking down consumer scams. When Diana explained our situation during the initial consultation, Sarah's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "This is a prosecutor's dream case," Sarah said, reviewing Diana's evidence files. "Clear pattern of fraud, multiple victims, documented threats, even arson. My partner Jake handles criminal law. This is exactly the kind of precedent-setting case that makes careers." The legal strategy was beautiful in its simplicity. 3 simultaneous attacks: criminal referral to the district attorney for fraud and extortion charges, federal complaint for mail fraud since Lorraine used postal services for her fake notices, and civil RICO lawsuit for organized criminal activity targeting our neighborhood. Sarah explained how the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act works during our strategy meeting. Originally designed to prosecute mobsters, RICO now covers any ongoing criminal enterprise that affects interstate commerce, which includes fraud schemes that target people with out-of-state bank accounts or retirement funds. When criminals organize systematic harassment for financial gain, federal courts treat them exactly like organized crime families, Sarah said, spreading statute books across her conference table. Same penalties, same asset forfeiture rules, same lack of sympathy from judges. Meanwhile, I was learning property law faster than a paralegal cramming for the bar exam. Turns out, fake HOAs violate about 17 different state and federal regulations, starting with fraudulent business filings and escalating to criminal impersonation of government authority. Diana organized our ally network with military precision. Mrs. Kowalski provided 2 years of fake violation notices, each one more ridiculous than the last. The Hendersons contributed bank statements showing systematic extortion payments. Mr. Petrov shared medical records documenting how harassment triggered his cardiac episodes. Pete Martinez from the hardware store became our star witness, providing detailed testimony about Jim's direct threats and Tyler's suspicious gasoline purchase. Even Deputy Craig Lorraine's own nephew agreed to testify about her attempts to manipulate police responses through false emergency claims. The counterintelligence phase was pure genius. Diana created fake WhatsApp messages about us considering surrender and planted stories about potentially selling the property to avoid further harassment. She even staged a fake argument with me in our driveway, complete with dramatic door slamming and raised voices about giving up the fight. Lorraine took the bait like a starving fish. Our security cameras caught her celebrating on her deck with Brenda and Tyler, toasting what they thought was their victory with champagne that probably cost more than Mr. Petrov's monthly Social Security check. But Diana's masterstroke was setting up the sting operation. She contacted Lorraine requesting a compliance negotiation meeting to discuss our surrender terms. Sarah coached me on exactly what questions to ask and how to phrase them to elicit admissions of criminal behavior. The meeting would be recorded using professional equipment provided by the prosecutor's office. Backup recording devices hidden throughout our property in case Lorraine tried to jam or destroy the primary evidence. Everything admissible in court, everything designed to let Lorraine hang herself with her own words. The smell of fresh printer ink filled our basement as we compiled evidence binders, one for each agency and court, that would soon know Lorraine's name. Diana's fingers flew across calculator keys, quantifying damages with the precision that once helped convict corporate embezzlers. Late-night strategy sessions fueled by coffee and righteous anger. The taste of justice getting closer with every document we filed, every witness statement we collected, every piece of Lorraine's criminal puzzle that clicked into place. Our neighbor network grew stronger daily. The WhatsApp group became a support system and intelligence sharing platform. Families who'd been isolated and terrorized for years suddenly had voices again, had hope again, had the courage to fight back against a bully who'd seemed untouchable. Jake, Sarah's criminal law partner, reviewed our evidence and started salivating. "This woman's going to prison," he announced after examining Diana's documentation. "The only question is whether she gets 3 years or 7. But we weren't done yet. The sting meeting was scheduled for the following weekend, and Diana had one more surprise planned, something that would make Lorraine's admission of guilt absolutely undeniable and completely destroy any chance she had of claiming innocence or ignorance. The trap was set. The evidence was overwhelming, and Lorraine was about to walk straight into legal quicksand with a smile on her face and confession on her lips. Lorraine must have smelled the legal walls closing in, because her next moves reeked of pure desperation. When cornered animals get dangerous, they don't think clearly, they just lash out at anything within reach. First came the pressure campaign. Lorraine started making house calls to every family who'd joined our little rebellion, armed with new threats and fictional legal documents. She told Mrs. Kowalski that cooperating with our frivolous lawsuit would make her an accessory to filing false police reports. She warned the Hendersons that their testimony could result in perjury charges and financial liability for community damages. The smell of fear hung over our neighborhood like morning fog as 3 families caved under the psychological pressure. The Weatherbys withdrew their witness statements after Tyler started parking outside their house for hours, just sitting there like some kind of stalker surveillance operation. The new couple at the end of the lake, the Garcias, suddenly developed amnesia about the harassment they'd previously documented in excruciating detail. But Lorraine's masterstroke of stupidity came when she tried to bribe me directly. She showed up at our door on a Tuesday evening while Diana was at the grocery store, carrying a manila envelope and wearing a smile that would make a snake oil salesman jealous. "Marcus, we need to talk," she said, inviting herself onto our porch like she owned the place. "This whole situation has gotten out of hand." I activated the recording app Sarah had installed on my phone, then stepped outside to hear whatever insanity was about to pour out of Lorraine's mouth. "Look, I'm willing to be reasonable here," she said, patting the envelope like it contained state secrets. "All these alleged violations, all these supposed compliance issues, they can disappear completely if we can reach an understanding." She opened the envelope to reveal $5,000 in cash, actual bills, fanned out like a Vegas poker hand, sitting there on our porch table in broad daylight. "Consider it a settlement," Lorraine continued, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a conspiratorial whisper. "You drop this ridiculous legal nonsense, convince your neighbors to stop causing trouble, and everyone goes back to peaceful lake living. No harm, no foul." The recording device in my pocket was capturing every word of this attempted bribery, but I needed her to be more specific about what exactly she was offering to make disappear. "What violations are you talking about?" I asked, playing dumb while my phone documented her confession. "Oh, you know, the gate color issue, the dock placement problems, all those community standards violations your wife keeps claiming are fake," Lorraine said, practically gift-wrapping her admission of fabricating charges. "Between you and me, I've been a little flexible with enforcement, but this lawsuit threatens the entire community structure we've built here." There it was, recorded in digital clarity, Lorraine admitting her violations were invented and her authority was fictional. But apparently, one confession wasn't enough for our aspiring crime boss. Lorraine's desperation kicked into overdrive when the bribery failed. She started a vicious smear campaign, creating fake social media profiles to spread rumors about Diana being mentally unstable and me having a violent criminal history. Anonymous letters appeared in neighbors' mailboxes claiming I'd threatened to burn down properties of anyone who opposed us. The psychological warfare escalated when Lorraine contacted Diana's part-time employer with fabricated complaints about erratic behavior and potential embezzlement concerns. She even tried to have our water shut off using forged county documents claiming we'd missed safety inspections. Tyler's vandalism campaign reached new heights of stupidity. Security cameras caught him slashing Mrs. Kowalski's tires and spray painting "snitch" across the Hendersons' mailbox. When the Garcias' dog mysteriously disappeared for 24 hours, only to be found locked in an abandoned shed with a note reading, "Accidents happen to families who don't mind their business," even the most intimidated neighbors realized Lorraine's operation had crossed from harassment into outright terrorism. But here's where Lorraine's master plan revealed its fatal flaw. Every escalating attack was being recorded, documented, and added to our growing criminal case. Diana created encrypted backups of all evidence files and established secure communication networks with our remaining allies. Each new harassment attempt just handed prosecutors another felony charge. The breaking point came when Lorraine discovered our planned appearance at the county commissioners' meeting. Her neighborhood spy network, probably Brenda, had tipped her off about Diana's plan to present evidence during the public comment period. Lorraine tried filing an emergency restraining order based on completely fabricated threats, claiming I'd made statements about burning down her house and teaching her a permanent lesson. The petition read like bad fiction written by someone with severe paranoid delusions. Judge Henderson, no relation to our neighbors, took exactly 12 minutes to review Lorraine's evidence and dismiss the petition with prejudice. Turns out, fake police reports and forged witness statements don't impress family court judges, especially when the defendant shows up with actual evidence contradicting every claim. That restraining order dismissal was Lorraine's final tactical error. Now she was officially on record filing false documents with the court system, adding perjury and abuse of process charges to her growing legal problems. The trap was closing, and desperation was making her careless. Lorraine's last stand began with what can only be described as a complete psychological meltdown disguised as strategic warfare. When she discovered Diana's plan to expose her publicly at the county commissioners' meeting, something inside that woman's brain just snapped like a over-tightened guitar string. First, she tried recruiting reinforcements from outside our neighborhood. Social media posts appeared on local Facebook groups claiming our lake community was being invaded by aggressive outsiders who threatened property values and community safety. She painted herself as a concerned citizen protecting vulnerable seniors from criminal elements with violent tendencies. The posts included carefully cropped photos of our security cameras, described as surveillance equipment used to spy on neighbors and intimidate elderly residents. Our evening barbecues became loud parties that disturbed the peace and attract undesirable elements. Even our dock repairs were twisted into unpermitted construction that violates environmental regulations. But Lorraine's desperation led to her biggest mistake yet. She reached out to County Commissioner Patricia Walsh directly, attempting to use political pressure to shut down our public complaint. What Lorraine didn't know was that Commissioner Walsh had been investigating HOA fraud complaints for 2 years and was absolutely fed up with fake associations terrorizing rural communities. When Lorraine called claiming to represent a legitimate homeowners association under attack by litigious troublemakers, Commissioner Walsh saw red flags bigger than carnival banners. Mrs. Kessler, Commissioner Walsh told me later, made the mistake of threatening a public official. She actually said I'd regret it if I allowed those people to spread lies about her community leadership. Commissioner Walsh contacted our attorney Sarah Chen, who provided copies of all our evidence files. That phone call turned our county meeting presentation from a citizen complaint into an official investigation with full prosecutorial support. Meanwhile, Tyler and Jim's vandalism campaign reached peak stupidity. They attempted to sabotage Diana's car by loosening lug nuts and cutting brake lines, criminal acts caught in perfect detail by Pete Martinez's hardware store security cameras as they bought the tools. Detective Rodriguez arrested Tyler at 6 a.m. the next morning, finding him in bed with bolt cutters, a tire iron, and brake fluid on his hands. Faced with video evidence and forensic proof, Tyler flipped on Lorraine faster than a pancake on Sunday morning. She told me if I didn't help her, she'd kick me out and I'd have nowhere to go, Tyler confessed, providing detailed testimony about 3 years of harassment campaigns against neighbors. Mom said these people were trying to destroy our community and we had to protect ourselves. Tyler's confession revealed the full scope of Lorraine's operation: systematic targeting of newcomers and elderly residents, coordinated harassment campaigns designed to force property sales, and financial extortion disguised as legitimate HOA enforcement. But the media attention really sent Lorraine over the edge. Channel 7 picked up our story as part of their Fraud Watch investigative series, interviewing multiple victim families about fake HOA scams across the county. Reporter Jessica Martinez Pete's daughter, as it turned out, convinced Lorraine to do an on-camera interview that became pure television gold. Lorraine actually defended her actions, claiming she was protecting property values and maintaining community standards against people who don't understand rural living. When Jessica asked about the fake documents, Lorraine doubled down. Sometimes community leadership requires making difficult decisions that outsiders don't appreciate. We've maintained property values and neighborhood safety for years. The interview aired that Friday night, making Lorraine locally famous as the fake HOA queen. Social media exploded with shares, comments, and other victims coming forward with similar stories from across 3 counties. Lorraine's final desperate gambit was attempting to empty the fake HOA bank account before authorities could freeze it. But Diana's forensic accounting background had anticipated this move, and she'd already flagged the account for suspicious activity monitoring. When Lorraine tried to withdraw the remaining funds, the bank's fraud prevention system triggered automatically. Not only did the withdrawal get blocked, but the attempted theft generated additional criminal charges for bank fraud and money laundering. The paper trail was devastating. ATM receipts showing failed withdrawal attempts, bank security footage of Lorraine arguing with tellers, and digital records proving she'd tried to transfer funds to personal accounts in 3 different names. Brenda, Lorraine's sister and chief accomplice, saw the writing on the wall and negotiated immunity in exchange for testimony. She provided prosecutors with detailed information about Lorraine's previous fraud conviction, her systematic targeting strategies, and even recordings of planning sessions where Lorraine discussed teaching people lessons they won't forget. Jim, the boyfriend who'd made direct threats, claimed he thought the HOA was legitimate and was just trying to help maintain community standards. Nobody believed him, especially after Pete Martinez testified about Jim's specific threats regarding mechanical failures and accidents. The final piece fell into place when Detective Rodriguez discovered Lorraine had been using a fake county employee ID to intimidate residents and gain credibility with utility companies. Impersonating government officials carries federal penalties that make bank fraud look like jaywalking. By the time our county commissioners' meeting arrived, Lorraine was facing 17 felony charges across 3 jurisdictions. Her reign of terror was ending not with a bang, but with handcuffs. The county commission meeting room hadn't seen a crowd like this since the casino referendum of 2019. Every seat filled, people standing along the walls, and Channel 7's news crew setting up cameras like they were covering a presidential debate. The air crackled with tension thick enough to cut with a chainsaw. Diana sat beside me in the front row, her evidence binders stacked like a fortress of justice on the table before us. She'd practiced her presentation for days, timing every slide, every revelation, every damning piece of proof that would finally expose Lorraine's criminal empire to the light. Lorraine arrived fashionably late with her remaining supporters, Tyler looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth, Brenda chain-smoking in the parking lot until the last possible second, and 3 neighbors who apparently still believed her fantasy about protecting property values. Commissioner Walsh called the meeting to order, and you could feel the collective held breath of 40-some people waiting for justice to finally show its face. We have a citizen complaint regarding fraudulent homeowners association activities in the Whispering Pines Lake area, Commissioner Walsh announced. Mrs. Diana Patterson will present her findings. Diana stood up with the confidence of someone who'd spent years testifying against corporate criminals, connected her laptop to the projection system, and delivered the performance of her lifetime. For 3 years, Lorraine Kessler has operated a fake homeowners association, collecting over $15,000 in fraudulent dues while systematically harassing families through fabricated violations and invented authority. Slide 1. Lorraine's fake incorporation documents next to real HOA filings, highlighting the missing state registrations and forged signatures. Slide 2. Bank records showing the $847 in actual funds versus the $32,000 in fictional reserves, Lorraine claimed. Slide 3. Medical records from Mr. Petrov documenting cardiac episodes triggered by harassment. Insurance claims from families charged inflated premiums based on false HOA requirements. The audience was dead silent except for the furious scratching of reporters taking notes and the soft clicking of camera shutters capturing Lorraine's face cycling through shades of panic. But Diana saved the nuclear option for last. Finally, I present audio evidence of Mrs. Kessler admitting to fabricating violations and offering bribes to suppress legal action. The recording played through the room's speaker system with crystal clarity, Lorraine's voice explaining how she'd been flexible with enforcement and offering $5,000 to make alleged violations disappear. You could hear a pin drop. Then the murmuring started, building to outright gasps when Lorraine's recorded voice admitted the violations were fake and her authority was invented. That's when Lorraine lost it completely. She stood up in the gallery, face purple with rage, pointing at Diana like some kind of demented prosecutor. "This is all lies and manipulation. These people are criminals trying to destroy our community standards. I've dedicated years of my life to protecting property values while they spread chaos and disrespect." Security moved toward her, but Lorraine wasn't done with her meltdown. "I built something beautiful here, a community with standards, with order, with respect for tradition. These outsiders want to turn our lake into some kind of lawless wasteland where anyone can do anything." Tyler tried to calm her down, grabbing her arm and whispering urgently, but she shoved him away with surprising force. "Don't touch me. You're all against me. The county, the police, even my own family. But I know what I've done for this community, and history will vindicate my efforts." Commissioner Walsh banged her gavel. "Ma'am, you need to sit down immediately or security will escort you from the building." But Lorraine was beyond reason now. "You have no authority over me. I answer to a higher calling, community preservation and property value protection. These people are nothing but troublemakers and lawsuit parasites." Security didn't wait for another outburst. They flanked Lorraine and guided her toward the exit while she continued ranting about community standards and outside agitators who don't understand proper lake living protocols. The whole scene was being broadcast live on the county's YouTube channel and recorded by every news crew in the county. Lorraine's public meltdown became her final, most damaging confession. Commissioner Walsh called for order and made the announcement we'd been waiting years to hear. "Based on the evidence presented tonight, I'm directing the county attorney to file criminal charges against Mrs. Kessler for fraud, extortion, and filing false documents. The sheriff's department will execute arrest warrants immediately," she continued. "Furthermore, the county will establish a fraud reporting hotline and work with state legislators to strengthen penalties for fake HOA schemes. No family should endure what these victims have suffered." The room erupted in applause. Mrs. Kowalski was crying. The Hendersons hugged each other. Mr. Petrov raised his fist in quiet victory. Outside the courthouse, Channel 7's Jessica Martinez interviewed Diana while I stood proudly beside my brilliant wife. "What would you tell other families facing similar harassment?" Jessica asked. Diana's response became the soundbite that launched 1,000 fraud investigations. "Document everything, report immediately, and never let bullies steal your peace. Justice delayed isn't justice denied, it's justice gathering evidence." 6 months later, Lorraine stood before Judge Martinez in an orange jumpsuit, looking like a deflated balloon that had finally run out of hot air. She pleaded guilty to 17 felony counts including fraud, extortion, arson conspiracy, and impersonating government authority, avoiding a trial that would have stretched her sentence into double digits. 4 years in state prison, followed by 3 years probation and $15,000 in restitution to victim families. The judge's words still ring in my ears. "Mrs. Kessler, you terrorized an entire community for personal gain. Your actions represent a betrayal of basic human decency that this court cannot tolerate." Tyler got 18 months probation and 300 hours of community service, specifically maintaining the very properties his mother had targeted for harassment. Poetic justice at its finest. Jim disappeared completely after the arrests, leaving behind unpaid rent and a forwarding address that led to a vacant lot in Nevada. Some people have survival instincts. Others have Jim's survival instincts. The financial recovery exceeded our wildest hopes. Our insurance company refunded over $8,000 in inflated premiums once they confirmed no legitimate HOA existed in our area. The civil lawsuit settlement provided additional compensation for emotional damages, property repairs, and legal fees. But the real healing began with what we built afterward. Our monthly lakeside dinners evolved into a genuine community tradition. Mrs. Kowalski hosts weekly coffee gatherings where neighbors share everything from gossip to gardening tips. I started organizing volunteer dock repair days that turned into full-blown neighborhood improvement festivals. The social transformation was remarkable. Families who'd been isolated by fear and intimidation suddenly had voices again, had friendships again, had the joy of actual community without manufactured drama and artificial rules. Diana discovered a passion for consumer protection advocacy, speaking at real estate conferences about recognizing and reporting HOA fraud. She's helped expose fake associations in 4 other counties, working with prosecutors to build cases that put scammers behind bars where they belong. I launched a YouTube channel called Lake Life DIY, that teaches people how to handle home improvement projects and property maintenance without getting ripped off by predatory contractors or fake authorities. Turns out, 30 years of electrical work gave me plenty of material for helping folks avoid getting shocked literally and figuratively. Our marriage grew stronger through the whole ordeal. Nothing bonds people quite like fighting side by side against genuine evil and winning through teamwork, determination, and Diana's terrifyingly effective investigative skills. The positive ripple effects keep expanding. County legislators passed the Fake HOA Prevention Act, inspired by our case, creating criminal penalties for impersonating homeowners associations and requiring verification systems to protect vulnerable residents. The local law school now uses our evidence files for consumer protection curriculum, teaching future lawyers how to recognize and prosecute organized fraud schemes. Professor Chen Sarah's sister, as it turned out, says our case provides a perfect example of how proper documentation and community organizing can defeat systematic harassment. But our proudest achievement is the Whispering Pines Justice Fund, a scholarship program that helps families across the state fight HOA fraud and property harassment. We raise money through our annual Lake Festival, a celebration that brings hundreds of people together for food, music, and workshops on property rights and fraud prevention. The community garden we planted where Lorraine's fake HOA office used to be produces vegetables that supply the local food bank. Every tomato and cucumber represents victory over fear, proof that good people can create beauty where bullies once spread ugliness. Some shadows linger, of course. New property buyers get full disclosure about our neighborhood's history, and Lorraine's house sits empty with a weathered for sale sign that nobody seems interested in changing. Reminders that evil leaves scars even after justice prevails. But those shadows make the light more precious. Every peaceful morning on our dock, every friendly wave from neighbors who no longer live in fear, every sunset that isn't interrupted by harassment or intimidation, these moments taste sweeter because we fought for them and won. The lake still calls at dawn, loons singing across water that reflects possibility instead of dread. We earned this peace through courage, community, and the absolute determination to never let bullies win. Drop your HOA nightmare stories in the comments. Whether you're watching from your dream cabin or cramped apartment, we want to hear how you fought back against petty tyrants. Hit subscribe because next week I'm sharing the unbelievable story about my neighbor who tried to literally steal my driveway. And I mean literally steal it with construction equipment.
Thanks for hanging out with us on HOA Stories, where the HOA Karens meet their match. If this story had you cheering or cringing, go ahead and like the video. Drop a comment with your reaction and hit subscribe so you're ready for the next wild HOA tale.